When Su Zhaoyu finally returned to Jiangnan after 2 long years, fate brought her and Shen Jinjuan together once more, beneath the familiar plum blossoms, where they had once exchanged promises. Their eyes met. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped. 2 years was not a short separation. The feelings they had once confessed remained unchanged, yet distance had left behind uncertainty neither dared acknowledge. Neither knew what the other had endured. The northern provinces had fallen into unrest. Trade routes were disrupted, couriers vanished along dangerous roads, and countless letters never reached their destinations. Shen Jinjuan wrote to her again and again. Su Zhaoyu did the same, yet every letter disappeared somewhere between them. 2 years passed in silence, not because they had forgotten one another, but because the world itself had kept them apart. Neither knew whether the promise made beneath the plum blossoms still lived within the other's heart. When Shen Jinjuan noticed the jade pendant still hanging from her waist, a quiet relief filled his chest. And when Zhaoyu learned that he had returned to the plum blossom tree every spring during her absence, her heart trembled. The years had changed many things, but not what they felt for each other. Their reunion was gentle and cautious, as though both feared that a single careless movement might shatter the fragile dream standing before them. In the months that followed, they grew close once more. Together they wandered through the bustling markets of Jiangnan, shared stories of the years they had spent apart, and slowly filled the silence that fate had forced between them. What had begun beneath the plum blossoms deepened into something even stronger. This time, Shen Jinjuan no longer wished to wait. He had already spent years fearing he had lost her forever. One evening, beneath a sky painted with falling petals, he finally spoke the words he had carried in his heart for years. I waited for you. Zhaoyu's eyes glistened with unshed tears. And I returned for you. No further confession was needed. Their hearts had chosen each other long ago. Only months after their reunion, disaster struck the Shen clan. Merchant ships vanished at sea without a trace. Trade routes that had once brought prosperity collapsed one after another, and debts rose like an endless tide. Within a matter of months, the once powerful Shen merchant clan was reduced to ruin. Upon hearing of their misfortune, Madame Su immediately offered assistance. You are family, she said gently. There is no shame in accepting help during difficult times. Yet Shen Jinjuan respectfully declined. If Zhaoyu chooses to marry me, I want to build a life worthy of her with my own hands, he replied. I cannot ask my future wife's family to restore what the Shen clan has lost. Though she disagreed with his decision, Madame Su respected his pride. Secretly, however, she ensured that rice, medicine, and other necessities found their way to Shen Jinjuan whenever times became especially difficult. For the first time, Shen Jinjuan feared that loving someone might only bring her suffering. One evening, beneath the fading light of dusk, he placed the jade pendant back into Su Zhaoyu's hand. You deserve a better life than this, he said quietly. But Zhaoyu gently closed her fingers around the pendant and shook her head. My life was never about wealth, she replied softly. When you had everything, I never desired it. Now that you have nothing, why would I leave you? In that moment, Shen Jinjuan understood that her heart was worth more than any fortune he had ever possessed. Soon afterward, they married. There was no grand procession, no lavish banquet, and no endless line of distinguished guests. Only simple vows exchanged before a handful of witnesses. Yet for both of them, it was enough. The years that followed blessed them with a son and a daughter, filling their modest home with laughter and warmth. Their son inherited Shen Jinjuan's calm temperament and thoughtful nature, while their daughter possessed Zhaoyu's bright smile and lively spirit. On spring afternoons, the family often gathered beneath the plum blossoms. Shen Jinjuan taught the children how to write while Zhaoyu embroidered nearby. Sometimes their daughter would tug at his sleeve and demand stories of distant provinces, while their son proudly displayed each newly learned character. In those quiet moments, it seemed as though all the years of waiting and separation had finally been rewarded. Even Madame Su often visited with gifts for her grandchildren, watching them play beneath the blossoms and silently thanking fate for reuniting the family she had once feared would never be together. Yet peace rarely lasted forever. Life after marriage proved far more difficult than either Zhaoyu or Jinjuan had imagined. Determined to restore the Shen clan's fortunes, Shen Jinjuan spent more and more time traveling across distant provinces in search of opportunities. Every departure weighed heavily upon him. Every return seemed shorter than the last. Meanwhile, the children continued to grow. The son who once clung to his father's robes gradually began helping with household affairs. The little girl who loved riding on her father's shoulders slowly blossomed into a graceful young lady. Too often, Shen Jinjuan witnessed these changes through letters and brief visits. Each farewell became harder than the one before. Days turned into months. Months turned into years. Though love remained, distance quietly settled between husband and wife. Arguments became more frequent. Silences grew heavier, and loneliness slowly took root within Zhao Yu's heart. One winter evening, after nearly 6 months away, Shen Jinjuan finally returned home. Snow drifted across the courtyard as he stepped through the gate. His daughter, now older than he remembered, stared at him uncertainly. For a brief moment, she did not move. Then she quietly hid behind Zhao Yu. The sight struck him harder than any failed investment or business loss ever could. Later that night, after the children had fallen asleep, Zhao Yu finally spoke. Tears glistened in her eyes. "You always say you do this for us," she whispered. "But the children are growing up without their father." Shen Jinjuan lowered his head. For the first time, he found himself without an answer. It was during this fragile period that Zhao Rian returned. Time had done little to soften her resentment. Having built a successful trading enterprise of her own, she frequently crossed paths with Zhao Yu at merchant gatherings and social events. At first, her words seemed harmless. "The Shen clan once stood above all others," she remarked one afternoon. "Who would have imagined things would become so difficult?" Zhao Yu merely smiled and changed the subject. But as time passed, Zhao Rian's comments grew sharper. "Shen Jinjuan claims to love you," she said. "But how many years has he spent away from home?" Zhao Yu remained silent. Zhao Rian glanced toward the children playing nearby. "If he truly loved you, would he leave you alone to bear everything yourself?" The words struck where Zhao Yu was most vulnerable. Not because she doubted his love, but because she missed him. For the first time, uncertainty entered her heart. One rainy evening, after yet another delayed return, Zhao Yu finally allowed her frustrations to surface. "You always say it is for our future," she said quietly, "but our future keeps taking you farther away from us." Shen Jinjuan stood frozen. For years he had endured betrayal, ridicule, and hardship without complaint. Yet Zhao Yu's words wounded him more deeply than any loss. "I never wanted this," he replied. "Every road I traveled, every risk I took, was so that you and the children would never know hunger or hardship again." Zhao Yu lowered her eyes. "I know." Her voice trembled. "That is why I hate myself for feeling this way." For a long moment, neither spoke. The distance between them seemed greater than all the provinces Shen Jinjuan had crossed. Then their daughter quietly appeared in the doorway. "Father?" The single word shattered the silence. Both turned toward her. In that moment, they realized that neither of them had become the enemy. The true enemy had always been the years of separation. That night, they spoke until dawn. They finally understood the burdens each had been carrying alone. Many times afterward, Shen Jinjuan came close to giving up. Business partners betrayed him. Investments failed. Entire caravans vanished before reaching their destinations. Yet whenever despair threatened to consume him, he thought of Zhao Yu and the children waiting at home. And each time, he forced himself to continue. Years later, fortune finally returned. After countless failures and sleepless nights, Shen Jinjuan secured an imperial supply contract. That earned the trust of officials across Jiangnan. Merchant houses that had once turned their backs on the Shen clan now sought his partnership, while caravans bearing the Shen banner once again crossed the empire's busiest trade routes. At long last, the Shen clan's name was restored. The day he returned home with the news, the entire family gathered to welcome him. His son was nearly a man grown. His daughter, once small enough to ride upon his shoulders, now stood beside her mother with quiet elegance. For a long moment, Shen Jinjuan simply stared at them. Years of sacrifice suddenly became real. The children he had worked so hard to provide for had grown up while he was away. "Father!" His daughter rushed forward first and threw her arms around him. Moments later, his son joined the embrace. For the first time in many years, the family stood together beneath the plum blossoms once more. Zhao Yu watched quietly from beneath the trees. Tears gathered in her eyes. The loneliness, the sacrifices, the endless waiting. At last, it all seemed worthwhile. The man she had loved through hardship and uncertainty had finally come home. And by then, wealth was no longer what mattered most. In the years that followed, Shen Jinjuan rebuilt everything he had once lost. He established a flourishing silk business in Zhao Yu's name. He built a grand residence where their family could finally live without worry. And at last, he gave her the wedding she had never truly received. The celebration lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Guests arrived from every corner of Jiangnan, filling the streets with laughter, music, and congratulations. Lanterns illuminated the night sky, while crimson silk banners danced in the spring breeze. As Zhao Yu walked toward him in robes of red silk embroidered with golden phoenixes, Shen Jinjuan could scarcely take his eyes off her. For a moment, he saw not only the woman before him, but every version of her he had loved throughout the years. The young woman who had waited beneath the plum blossoms, the devoted wife who had remained by his side through poverty and uncertainty, the mother who had carried their family through years of hardship while he struggled to rebuild their future. When he finally took her hand, his grip tightened ever so slightly. All the years of waiting, all the years of separation, all the years of sacrifice, heartbreak, and perseverance. At last, they had arrived at the future they had once only dared to dream of. Above them, plum blossoms drifted softly through the air, the same blossoms that had witnessed their first meeting, the same blossoms that had watched over their years of longing, the same blossoms that now blessed their long-awaited happiness. Years later, spring returned once again to Jiangnan. The plum trees bloomed as beautifully as they always had. This time, however, Shen Jinjuan and Su Zhaoyu sat together beneath their branches, watching their children and grandchildren run through the falling petals. Their son had built a family of his own. Their daughter returned every spring with her children, filling the residence with laughter and life. The sounds of happiness echoed throughout the courtyard, carrying memories of a lifetime spent together. The jade pendant still rested at Zhao Yu's waist, untouched by the passing years, as Shen Jinjuan gently held her hand. His gaze settled upon the familiar piece of jade. Decades had passed since the day he first gave it to her. Empires had changed. Fortunes had risen and fallen. Years of separation, hardship and joy had come and gone, yet she had never once removed it. Only then did he truly understand something he should have known long ago. The greatest treasure he had ever possessed was never his family's wealth. It was the woman sitting beside him, the woman who had waited for him beneath the plum blossoms, the woman who had chosen him when he had everything, and who had chosen him again when he had nothing. Time had taken much from them. Youth had faded. Friends had come and gone. The years themselves had slipped quietly into memory, yet time had also given them something priceless. A love that endured every trial, a family built through patience, sacrifice, and unwavering devotion, and a lifetime of memories that neither hardship nor fate could ever erase. As the blossoms drifted through the warm spring breeze, Shen Jinjuan intertwined his fingers with Zhao Yu's. She smiled and rested her head gently upon his shoulder. No words were needed. They had already spoken every promise that mattered. Together, they watched the falling petals dance across the courtyard, just as they had all those years ago. And beneath the eternal plum blossoms, they remained side by side until the end of their days. For some loves are written not in words, but in years, and theirs was a love that time itself could never erase.